Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Baradhari. Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Baradhari. Yasura Nandana Rajajana Ranjana. Yasura Nandana Rajajana Ranjana. Shamana Sira Vanachari. Yamuna Jira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Pada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Charja Stotara Sarashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Charja Stotara Sarashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskricham Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, text, or chapter 18. What is it, text number 20 or? Huh? What's that text number?
20.
20. Text 20. Etavatalam, that one?
Yes.
Etavatalam nanu suchitena Gunaira samanya natisha yanasya Hidvetaran partayato vibhutir Yasyangri renum jusate nabipsho Itavatalam nanu suchitena Gunaira samya naniti shayanasya Idvetaran prartayato vibhutir Yasyangri renum jusate navipsho Itavatalam nuna suchitena nanu suchena Gunaira Samyana Tisha Yanasya Idvetaran Prartayato Vibhutir Isyangri Renum Jusate Navipso Itavatalam Nanusuchitena Tetaran prartayo vibhuti Yasangri renum jusate navipsoho Itavatalam nanusuchitena Gunaya samyanita shayanasya Idvetaran prartayato vibhutir Yasyangri renum jusate navipso Tavalam suchitena Vetaran prartayato vibhutir Yasyangri renum jusate navipsoho. Anyone else? Ladies? Italam Suchitena Gunaya Samyani Taishan Yanasya Jetaran Pratayato Vibhutir Yes Yangri Renum Jusate Navipsaho Etavata, so far. Alam, unnecessary. Nanu, if at all. Suchitena, by description. Gunahai, by attributes. Samya, immeasurable. Anyati, others. So sorry. Anyati Shayanasya, of one who is unexcelled. Hitva, leaving aside. Itaran, others. Partayataha, of those who ask for. Vibhutihi, favor of the goddess of fortune. Yasya, one whose. Hungry, feet. Renum, dust. Jusate, serves. Anabipsaho, of one who is unwilling. It is now ascertained that he, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited, and there is none equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune, even by prayers. But this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service. The personality purport. The personality of Godhead, or the Parameshwara Parabrahman, according to the Shrutis, has nothing to do. He has no equal, nor does anyone excel him. He has unlimited potencies, and his every action is carried out systematically in his natural and perfect ways. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in himself and has nothing to accept from anyone else, including the great demigods like Brahma. Others ask for the favor of the goddess of fortune, and despite such prayers, she declines to award such favors. But still she renders service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he has nothing to accept from her. The personality of Godhead, in his Garbhodakashayi Vishnu feature, begets Brahma, first created person in the material world, from his navel lotus stem, and not in the womb of the goddess of fortune, who is eternally engaged in his service. These are some of the instances of his complete independence and perfection. That he has nothing to do does not mean that he is impersonal. He is transcendently so full of inconceivable potencies that simply by his willing, everything is done, without physical or personal endeavor. He is called, therefore, Yogeshwara, or the Lord of all mystic powers. Translation again. It is now ascertained that he, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited, and there is no equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune, even by prayers. But this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service. Mukam karoti vachalam bhangam langayate girim yatkari pataraham bande Shri Guru Dinatanane. So these prayers repeated by Sutta Goswami are very important. There are many misconceptions of the Lord. Most people think of God as an order supplier who's going to make everything all right, who's going to take care of my family, who's going to award me lots of wealth and good things. And if he doesn't do that, then I don't believe in him. I think we heard once that during World War II, a lot of the wives of men of husbands and fathers and sons who had gone to fight in World War II were praying for the return of their male counterparts. And if they were missing in action or killed in the war, they all became atheists, even though they were filling the churches praying for God for the return of their loved ones. But that's the concept of God as an order supplier. If He doesn't give us what we immediately want, then we just don't believe that He exists. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that Krishna is called the Yogeshwar, or the Lord of all mystic powers. It's also written in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is the master of all mystic powers. He's the greatest yogi. Yatra yoga. It's said that He's the greatest of all yogis. A yogi, it is said, can manifest himself in 9 different places, but Krishna manifested Himself in thousands of different forms. He married thousands of over 16,000 wives, and for each wife He built a beautiful palace. So there are many misconceptions of God, that He is love, He is nature, He is wealth, so forth and so on. But as Kali Yuga gradually progresses, most people still believe that God has omniscient powers, or all great knowing powers. People often pray to God before they go to bed at night. And so they believe that God can actually hear these prayers. So there's something to be said for people who have a belief, and they may not know exactly who God is, but they have a sense that there's an omnipotent and omniscient God, an all-knowing and all-powerful God somewhere in the universe. And when people are faced with, especially when they're faced with the death of themselves or their loved ones, they're even more God conscious. I was driving once in New Zealand, and I saw a billboard that had photographs on it, or drawings, I guess they were illustrations, of 3 things. There were 2 speedometers. One was going about 60 kilometers per hour, and one was, the indicator showed that it was going about 100 kilometers per hour. And the third image was of a coffin with a cross on it, showing that if you exceeded the speed limit of 100 kilometers or whatever it was, you would die. So it was an indication that people have this conception of God that He's going to be available for us when we face death. When we face death, people generally don't have anything else to think about. They have no control over, and it's the end of everything for them. I read once a story by Leo Tolstoy called Anna Karenina, and at the end of the story, she commits suicide because she's very unhappy, Anna Karenina. She throws herself in front of a train and dies. So they think, and of course he was a bit of a spiritualist, but generally this book was written for people who are of the general readers, the general populace. They think that death is the end of everything. There's no concept that there's going to be another birth. It's going to be the end of everything, and so that's what people generally think of God. They think of God as mountains and rivers and things like that. So there are many misconceptions, and in this chapter we're reading about Maharaj Pariksit being cursed to death. It's interesting. An interesting side note is that the Sutta Goswami, who's narrating this story, says that we are not born in an aristocratic family. He uses what they call the royal we. It was used by, I think, Queen Victoria, who said we are not amused. She was referring to I herself. But it's called the royal we because monarchs used it a lot. They didn't describe themselves as I or me, but they used the term we. And I think Prabhupada used that term too. He said that he's not in part of the royal dynasty, but I guess we could consider him as sort of an aristocrat. And it's a very common thing. Anyway, Maharaj Pariksit was, in addition to being a Raja Rishi, was a kind of a policeman. He saw that someone was abusing a cow in his kingdom, and he was very dissatisfied, and he actually drew his sword on the person who was committing the crime. So he was not actually not only a great saintly person, but a rishi, a raja, a king. Kings in those days had to be not only saintly, but they had to protect people. They had to protect people from rogues. They had to protect people from criminals. They had to protect people from crime in general. They had another side to them, besides always being good and flowers and love and peace and tolerance. But they didn't, like Maharaj exhibited, they didn't tolerate injustice. And that was the mood of protection. They had this element of a protective nature. Nowadays we have police forces that do all that. But in earlier times, the Raja Rishis had the unthankless tasks of punishing criminals. It wasn't very adorable, but it happened. And of course, in prior yugas or different ages, there wasn't so much crime. It was the advent of Kali when this rogue was caught torturing an animal. So this is an example of Maharaj Pariksit being not only a great king, a great raja, but also a protecting his subjects from criminals and crime. Another interesting thing is that sometimes we're told that we should verify all truths by Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, that there are three things, that there's the Guru, there's the Shastra, and there's the Sadhu. But one of the things that's not mentioned here is that almost all Shastras are spoken originally by Sadhus. So in a way, the Sadhu is the most important aspect. The Guru and the Sadhu are the most important aspect of our lives. It's said that Mahajayena Gatasapanta, at the end of there's a verse in the Mahabharata that says that the secrets of all Vedic wisdom is located in the hearts of the great Mahajans, and it names who the Mahajans are. Swayambhur, Shambhu, Lord Krishna is of course the ultimate. All the Shastras originally emanate from his speech. And as it is said in the purport here, he doesn't have to actually do anything. He just thinks things and they happen. They happen by his thought. So the great Mahajans like Bhishma and Prahlad and Yamaraj and Maharaj, they're all noted. The father of Sita was one of them. Lord Brahma is one of them. These are the main authorities in Krishna consciousness, and it is said in Prabhupada's purports that we can't really understand Krishna. Actually, no one can understand Krishna completely, but we can get a glimpse of what it is like in the spiritual world by reading the writings and going through the Goswamis of Vrindavan, the sadhus who are there, the media, what Prabhupada calls the via media, peoples that can deliver Krishna because they're realized persons. So a little bit later in this chapter, it's said that Maharaj Pariksit, he was accursed by this Brahmin boy, Shringi, the son of Shamaka Rishi, and Shamaka Rishi, after he comes out of his trance or whatever it was, he kind of prays to God that he will be forgiven for having such a disobedient son, that he cursed one of the great Raja Rishis of the world, Maharaj Pariksit. And Prabhupada writes in there it's the practice of a conditioned soul, of a realized soul. It says repentance comes into the mind of a good soul. So. And he was praying to the Lord for repentance, Shamaka Rishi, for having such a disobedient and flagrant son who is over what Shamaka Rishi considered a minor offense. He was given this he was asking for repentance from the Lord. And in another sense, this is the beginning of the age of Kali, when the downfall of the Brahminical caste, so to speak. There were Shamaka Rishi and his son were Brahmins, or in the Brahminical category, and yet they tended to violate. It is the beginning of Kali Yuga when a Brahmin curses a king. That's considered to be a very, very unhappy event, and it was the beginning of the age of Kali. So I'm going to, if it's okay, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to read one of the offerings. Most of these offerings in the Vyasa Puja book are talking, almost every one of them mentions the virus that's going around infecting everyone, because most of the people who are writing in this book, I suppose, are preachers of one sort or another, traveling preachers. But anyway, this one this offering doesn't really mention much about the virus. But it's interesting because it tells what's going on in the world. And sometimes we tend to, of course it's nice to have a esprit de corps, what the corporate world calls pride of association, but it's also nice to think internationally and to know what's going on. So I'm going to read the offering, if you'll indulge me, of New Vrindavan, which was the first rural community established in Prabhupada's movement. And it says that it's written by your indebted servants at New Vrindavan. It's hard to think that all the indebted servants, over 100 of them, had input into this offering, but anyway, that's what it says. Dearest Srila Prabhupada, please accept our humble obeisances at your soft lotus feet. All glories to your divine grace, all glories to New Vrindavan, the land of Krishna, which you gave to the Western world. We are writing this offering at a critical time. I guess it's coming now, when thousands of people worldwide have succumbed to the coronavirus, a pandemic that has left people helpless, destitute, and looking for answers materially and spiritually. But as you have mentioned, there is no material solution to man's problems, to the cycle of suffering and repeated birth and death. Finding a temporary fix does not end suffering or uproot man's greed, lust, pride, envy, or other vices, which are the causes of suffering, as well as the distressing state of the earth. You gave permanent spiritual solutions, just as a boil cannot be treated only externally with hot compresses and pain medication, but is cared for and is cured by addressing the underlying disease in the blood. So you gave the actual cure for our diseased hearts and the diseased earth. At this precarious time, the cures you gave us in the form of your instructions are vital. We take shelter of your instructions for New Vrindavan, which are also instructive for the entire world. You gave us 5 important ways to focus our efforts: simple living and high thinking. During this world crisis, the New Vrindavan community is regularly discussing your instructions on self-sufficiency and simple living, high thinking lifestyle. Not even basic products are available, I think it's a misprint, are available in stores, and we carefully clean boxes of fruit and vegetables to prevent transmission of the virus. Even our devotees are afraid of the risks, a fact that propels us to focus on fulfilling your dream of a self-sufficient village, where dependence on outside sources is reduced as much as possible. We also realize that your prediction of millions coming to ISKCON farms for shelter and food may soon become a reality. So we are concentrating our efforts on expanding our fruit and vegetable production. The Eco Vrindavan project operates 3 large, high tunnels, fully equipped greenhouses in which we produce vegetables for the temple. The New Vrindavan residents, another typo, erected another greenhouse to increase the supply. Now we look forward to larger quantities of wonderful organic, homegrown vegetables for Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Chandra and their devotees. The modern world is globally interdependent for basic resources. This international supply chain has been crippled during the pandemic. But because you have encouraged and started self-sufficient farming communities in various parts of the world, these communities are reaping the fruits of self-sufficiency during this time of need. While many go hungry, the devotees can be assured of the sustainability you spoke about. When the world has fallen to its knees, who would be so foolish as to not follow in your footsteps? You also showed us how to live simply, in the mode of goodness, to follow basic codes of cleanliness and etiquette, washing hands and following other strict hygiene practices in our personal lives and in temple and deity worship, taking off our shoes before entering the temple or other buildings, and greeting each other with folded palms instead of shaking hands, something the world is appreciating and now trying to follow. You wanted us to set an example for the world. You showed us that by protecting the earth and living in harmony with nature, with Krishna in the center, we can be sustained by the earth's many treasures. And since the nature of the world's dukkhalayam ashashvatam, where there is uncertainty and danger at every step, another disaster may strike at any moment. You wanted to prepare us for the worst, and through us, encourage everyone to seek a simpler, more fulfilling life, depending on Krishna and his natural bounty. And then there's a subheading called Cow Protection. You often emphasized that protecting Krishna's cows forms the basis of Dharma. Now the world faces the consequences because of adharma, stripping the earth of its resources and slaughtering innocent creatures to satisfy the tongue. As a result, climate change, increasing natural disasters, and pestilence are a few examples of Mother Earth's rebellion. From the Srimad Bhagavatam we learn that Mother Bhumi begs the Lord to intervene whenever adharma is rampant on earth. She takes the form of a cow, showing that protecting cows is a crucial component of protecting the earth. And when cows are mistreated, the earth withdraws its bounty. Therefore, at New Vrindavan, we strive to follow your example of nurturing cows, together with the land. This marks, this year, 51 years since you named New Vrindavan's first cow, Kalia, and started a cow sanctuary, the first of its kind in the Western world. Now, New Vrindavan's Goshala is home to more than 67 cows, calves, bulls, and oxen, with a team of dedicated cowherds and supporters to take care of them. In return, our 8 milking cows give rich, nourishing milk, which is made into paneer milk, milk sweets, yogurt, and ghee for the deities and devotees. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for giving us the gift of raising and protecting Krishna's cows. By caring for them and giving others the opportunity to serve them through cow protection and care, we are assured of abundant material and spiritual wealth. After all, Vrindavan, the spiritual abode of Krishna, is named Goloka, planet of the cows. Thank you for giving us a glimpse of the spiritual world at New Vrindavan. The next subheading is called Spiritual Education. Your purpose was to educate people, not with material knowledge, although that too exemplified through your expert management of the society, but with the light of spiritual knowledge. You taught us the essence of life, to serve Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy. And for this you endured many hardships in order to translate and deliver the ancient Vaishnava scriptures, which give a clear understanding of our identities as spirit souls and our eternal connection with Krishna. Through your many volumes of books, conversations, and lectures, as well as your personal association, you planted the seed of devotion in the hearts of thousands. In the same way, you gave special attention to New Vrindavan through your 4 personal visits, valuable instructions in letters and talks, and your vision for New Vrindavan. For this, we are eternally grateful. We can show our gratitude only by trying to fulfill your vision and share with others what you gave us. Through a variety of devotional retreats, seminars, and workshops, we strive to give people a spiritual perspective on life, a sense of the profound purpose that is service to God, and the rich spiritual heritage you mercifully gave us. You had a special interest in educating the younger generation of Krishna consciousness. So we are happy to inform you that our children are still being nurtured in our Gopal's Garden homeschool coop. You have shown us how the sun of spiritual knowledge eradicates illusion and misery. In this age of increasing calamity and instability, please continue using us as emissaries of spiritual knowledge in order to remove the darkness of this world. The next subheading is called Place of Pilgrimage. You wanted New Vrindavan to be a sacred place of spiritual inspiration and rejuvenation, giving its visitors a unique experience of the spiritual world. You foresaw that the idyllic atmosphere of New Vrindavan would capture the hearts of spiritual seekers and make Krishna's presence felt. Your vision became a reality. New Vrindavan has been a sacred place of pilgrimage for hundreds of thousands of guests and pilgrims over the past 5 decades, and the number of visitors increases by about 5% yearly. Last year, around 35,000 visitors and pilgrims came to New Vrindavan. We try our best to give them a positive impression of the society you created, and we hope that by your mercy, New Vrindavan can touch the hearts of many more pilgrims in the future. We are pleased to inform you that as a fitting tribute to the 40th anniversary of your Smriti Samada, your Palace of Gold was listed in the National Register of Historic Places last year, officially recognizing it as a transcendental national historical monument. This will encourage many more people to visit your Palace of Gold and receive your grace. Certainly, your ISKCON centers throughout the world have become tirthas, spiritual havens, during the turbulence of Kali Yuga. Even during this global catastrophe, when we are forced to close our doors to the public, people are trying to connect with New Vrindavan and your other temples through the internet. We have extended our preaching activities to online programs, which have attracted even more attendance than those we hold in the temple building. This has inspired us to create and to continue using innovative ways to reach out to people. Daily, during this pandemic, we send out a newsletter in an attempt to be a small ray of light in people's stressful lives. Perhaps a new era of preaching has begun, a time when people are more receptive to imbibing Krishna's teachings, a time when the earth can be reprieved and we can press the earth's reset button at a time and a time it is to fulfill the ultimate goal of life. We pray for the strength and ability to deliver the real solution of the world's challenges, the process of reviving God consciousness. Only an individual shift in consciousness can cause a universal shift. Please bless us to take the pilgrimage place of New Vrindavan out to every home and heart. To further replicate Vrindavan at New Vrindavan, he wanted the 7 prominent Vrindavan temples to adorn the hills of New Vrindavan. You saw that this would draw more people to Krishna's shelter. You often remarked that your goal was not to build opulent temples, but to create wonderful facilities and opportunities for people to hear and chant about Krishna, which would end their sojourn in this material world and give real happiness. With your love and compassion to inspire us, we are trying hard to complete the first temple for Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. Although the temple construction is currently on hold, we request your blessings and guidance to overcome the eternal struggles we face in completing this grand project for your pleasure. The last subheading says, Loving Krishna. You epitomize the truth that loving Krishna, our eternal friend and well-wisher, gives divine joy and eternal life with him. Whatever we do at New Vrindavan is to bring us and others to this platform of loving Krishna. Our colorful festivals, holy name retreats, yoga camps, children's fun activities, 24-hour kirtan programs, and other events are meant to attract people to Krishna, the abode of bliss and refuge of love. As you often emphasized, love for Krishna will purify our hearts and bring universal brotherhood and peace on earth. Now they use the term family instead of universal brotherhood. It's a universal family, because brotherhood has gender connotations. As you often emphasize, love for Krishna will purify our hearts and bring universal brotherhood and peace on earth. It will end the cycle of birth and death and take us to the spiritual sky, where we truly belong. What can be a greater gift than this? In giving the New Vrindavan community 5 priceless gifts or instructions to live by, you have already given us the spiritual world. How can we ever repay you? We can only try to make these instructions one with our lives, to please you by persevering against all odds, to spread your mission, to share the ideals and gifts you painstakingly endeavored to give us, and to become pure instruments of your love and compassion. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, your indebted servants of New Vrindavan, West Virginia, USA. New Vrindavan Ki Jai. I wanted to mention that there was a time in Los Angeles, I think it was in 1973, when Prabhupada was told that if his movies or videos would be broadcast all over the United States, which they assured Prabhupada they would, that he said that he would stop all his traveling and just preach from one place. Of course, it didn't happen, but they made several videos of Prabhupada with very large 35mm cameras, lighting, and set up a very ornate Vyasasana for him in Los Angeles. So it's not unprecedented that preaching through the internet was something that Prabhupada embraced. There are many sects that don't allow people even to use telephones within their communities. If they want to use telephone, they have to go outside of their community and use it there. So their concept of material world being bad is not complete. Whereas we have the Yukta Vairagya verse by Rupa Goswami, Nasaktasyam Vishayam Yatarham Upayunjita, which explains that everything can be used for Krishna. And Prabhupada was very fond of saying that in India there's a very common mudra. It means blessings, but it also means that I won't accept anything. But Prabhupada says, my mudra is like this: give me everything. So he wrote in airplanes, he used dictaphones, he produced his books with using computers. So he used telephones. He wasn't averse to modern technology if it can be used for Krishna. The gross example is that a knife in the hand of a murderer is not the same thing in the knife in the hand of a medical surgeon. So fortunately, we've been given this Yukta Vairagya philosophy that we can use everything in Krishna's service. We don't deny technology if it can be used in the service of the Lord, as Prabhupada has done. There was a time when, I think it was in Brazil, when devotees had a conference to say that we don't need technology. It took place in Nova Gokula, which is a sort of a rural community, and the devotees were criticized for inviting people to come because they had to use airplanes to get there, they had to use automobiles to get there, and they said, the criticism was, why are you stressing no need for technology when you're actually embracing the technology to get people to come? And the answer was that we're teaching people that they don't need this technology. We're teaching people that you can live in a very simple life, and if you have to use technology, it can be used to say that we can do without it. Basically, that was our answer, that we could do without it. So that's pretty much what I had to say. Are there any further comments or questions? I think this country is a little more fortunate than the USA, because that's where most of these offerings seem to come from, and they're getting hit pretty hard by this pandemic. Of course, it has advantages, as mentioned here, in that more people can be reached through modern technology, through the internet. And some people, not all, but some people are learning their lessons the hard way. That there is what Prabhupada called in the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, a pinprick in society somewhere. We're making a lot of advances in education, a lot of advances in medicine, a lot of advances in technology, a lot of advances in travel. But at the same time, there's a pinprick somewhere. People they still have to die. I mean, no matter how much advancement, no matter how many cures are invented every year by the pharmaceutical industry, there's always going to be death. And I read somewhere, I think it was in one of the current of the world magazines like Time or Newsweek, that we may live longer, like to the age of 200 or 300 or 400 or 700 years, but there's no way to advance the human brain that's so far been invented. So we could live a long time, but we're I mean, those that can afford it have artificial this and artificial that, but we're going to be robots, basically. We're going to be unthinking automatons. So that's part of the pinprick of things not really being so perfect in the material world. And it's very interesting that something so small, so invisibly small, that it cannot be seen by the naked eye, as the pandemic, the virus, it can only be seen through very powerful microscopes, and even then it's not clear what it is. Has brought civilization effectively, travel and government issues and moving around, to its knees. It shows that people are realizing, even though the rural tracts of land are more expensive, people are also realizing that the life can be very happy. A rural life can be very happy. I mean, and even if the huge populations of the cities reduce by 20%, that's something. That's a step in the right direction. And it's our hope that the things like this rampant disease will bring people to their senses that rural living is the way to go. Anyway, let's see what the future brings. So, any comments or questions on any of this? I should probably read the verse again. It is now ascertained that He, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited, and there is none equal to Him. Consequently, no one can speak of Him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune even by prayers, but this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although He is unwilling to have such service. I guess one of the lessons we can learn from this verse is that we may want many things. We may want good fortune, more wealth, more strength, more beauty, and we may even pray for these things. But even the goddess of fortune, who has everything one could desire, feels that service to the Lord, selfless service, not asking for anything, is the more important, the best thing, the greatest treasure house of pleasure for the whole world. So, any yes?
Reminds us, it seems that in the farm specifically have that mission of a simple living high thinking, but at the same time we're preaching moving entrenched in technology. So it seems like the two are opposite ends in a sense. That we've got to aspire for this simple living on self-reliance. At the same time, I've got to drive a Japanese built car to come to the farm so I can serve cows. So it's a real challenge to break away and develop that spirit. We're also preachers and doing some of the other things.
Part of the problem is that most, not all, but some rural communities, like this one in particular, are very close to towns that have supermarkets and video rental places and sports facilities. So without automobiles, we'd be at a loss. I mean, we could ride bicycles. In Brazil, they call it local technology. In England, they used to call it intermediate technology. In other words, we're not going to completely go self-sufficient and renounce all use of everything, but we're going to use some things that are useful. So it's kind of like yukta vairagya. Like even people that build houses that espouse self-sufficiency, they're using nails, and nails are manufactured in factories, and factories are hellish. But it's a question of using it. And it's the ultimate goal, of course, is simple living and high thinking, to do without any technology. But consider a bicycle is even considered technology. A bullock cart is a type of technology. So maybe we're arguing over technical and semantical terms, but the internet and more sophisticated forms than automobiles of technology have their use in Krishna consciousness, but they have their use to ultimately to show people that we don't need them. Ultimately, I don't know if that's. I mean, it's one of those things you could talk about for decades. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. There was a rule. Yeah, there were.